In the summer of 2017, a young woman sat in her car in a gym parking lot in Chatham, Kent, unaware that the next few moments would be her last. Just minutes earlier, she had texted her mother with words that now seemed chillingly prophetic. "Mom, he's turned up at the gym and come next to me." Her mother told her to go straight home. She never made it. What happened in that parking lot at the Dockside Retail Outlet would expose the dark intersection between modern romance, social media, and obsession, revealing how the very platforms designed to connect us can sometimes be weaponized by those who refuse to let go. Molly McLaren was 23 years old, vibrant and full of life. Like millions of people her age, she was active on social media, sharing moments from her daily life, her thoughts, her experiences. She was the kind of person who embraced the digital age, documenting her world online for friends and family to see. In many ways, she was utterly ordinary in this regard, living her life in the way that had become normal for her generation. But this openness, this willingness to share, would ultimately play a role in a tragedy that no one could have predicted when she first swiped right on a dating app called Tinder. Joshua Stimpson was 26 years old when he matched with Molly on Tinder. The app, like so many others, promised connection, romance, the possibility of finding someone special in a world where traditional dating had given way to digital profiles and carefully curated photographs. For Molly and Joshua, that initial connection seemed promising enough. They began dating, and like many modern couples, their relationship played out partly in the real world and partly online. Molly, being the social media user she was, documented aspects of their time together. It seemed at first like any other relationship beginning in the digital age, but the relationship was brief. Molly and Joshua separated, and for Molly, that should have been the end of it. A relationship that didn't work out, a learning experience, a chapter closed. She moved on with her life, continuing to share her experiences on social media, continuing to live openly in the way she always had. But for Joshua Stimpson, the separation was not an ending, it was something else entirely. And the very platforms that had brought them together, the very openness that Molly embraced, would become tools in his hands, tools that allowed him to maintain a presence in her life even when she wanted him gone. The man who became obsessed with her began a relentless campaign of online harassment after their brief relationship ended. He stalked her across social media, repeatedly creating new accounts to contact her, posting cruel and humiliating comments about her, and even messaging her friends and family with disturbing accusations and insults. At times, he made ominous posts suggesting that there was more to come, language that deeply unsettled those who saw it. Molly documented much of this behavior, saving messages and screenshots, and she reached out to friends and relatives to explain what was happening and how frightened she felt. In private messages, she described feeling watched, trapped, and unable to escape his presence, even online. Despite her efforts to block him and seek help, the digital harassment followed her everywhere, becoming an inescapable part of her daily life and a warning, in hindsight, of the danger she knew she was facing. The pattern had been there before Molly. Alexandra Dale had dated Stimpson back in 2013, and from the very beginning she noticed something unsettling. Immediately he warned her not to speak to any men, including male friends. He didn't like it, he told her. It was a red flag, the kind of possessive behavior that speaks to something deeper, something darker. But it didn't stop there. Alexandra discovered that Stimpson was following her without her knowledge, taking pictures of her, questioning why she wore certain clothes. The surveillance was constant, invasive, suffocating. Then came the moment that truly frightened her. She received a picture of her back garden. She had never told Stimpson where she lived. He had found her anyway, tracked her down, made sure she knew he was watching. And then, as she prepared to go on holiday, he sent her a message that crossed from disturbing into threatening. "I'm going to fly out and drown you." Alexandra went to the police. The harassment stopped, at least for her, but the pattern was established, the warning signs were there, written in the experiences of a woman who had escaped. Leah Hubbard dated Stimson in 2016, just a year before he met Molly. Her experience echoed Alexandra's in troubling ways. The relationship ended after Stimson spat a drink over her, a moment of aggression that revealed his true nature. But even after she ended things, he appeared at her flat at 2 a.m, knocking on her window, asking to charge his phone. It was an excuse, a reason to maintain contact, to insert himself into her space even when he wasn't wanted. Leah, like Alexandra, recognized the danger and got away. But the pattern continued, and Joshua Stimson continued, moving from one relationship to another, carrying with him this need to control, to surveil, to possess. When Molly McLaren entered his life, she had no way of knowing about Alexandra or Leah. She had no way of knowing that the man she had matched with on Tinder had a history of obsessive behavior, of following women, of refusing to accept when relationships ended. She saw only what he presented to her on his profile, in their early conversations, in the beginning of their brief relationship. And when she decided to end things, she likely thought, as anyone would, that it was her choice to make, that she had the right to walk away, to move on with her life. But Joshua Stimson had other plans. And in the age of social media, where people share their locations, their activities, their daily routines, he had the tools to execute those plans. Molly's openness on social media, her willingness to share where she was and what she was doing, gave Stimson a window into her life even after their relationship ended. He could see where she went, what she did, who she spent time with. The platforms that were meant to connect friends and family became, in his hands, surveillance tools. He was tracking her movements, watching her, waiting. On that day in June 2017, Molly went to Pure Gym at the Dockside Retail Outlet in Chatham. It was a normal part of her routine, the kind of thing she might have shared on social media, the kind of detail that seemed innocent when posted, but became dangerous in the wrong hands. CCTV footage from the gym would later show Joshua Stimson walking up and down the gym stairs twice, a strange behavior that suggested he was working up to something, preparing himself. Then he entered the fitness suite and placed his exercise mat near Molly's. He was there, in her space, uninvited and unwanted. At 10:45 that morning, Molly sent a text message to her mother. The words were simple but filled with fear. "Mom, he's turned up at the gym and come next to me." She followed the text with a phone call. Her mother, sensing the danger, told her to go straight home. Molly left the gym and got into her car, probably feeling a sense of relief, thinking she was escaping, that she would be safe once she drove away. But Joshua Stimson followed her to the parking lot. He got into her car, and he stabbed her with a knife he had purchased at an Asda store 2 days earlier. 2 days earlier. That detail is crucial because it speaks to premeditation, to planning, to a decision made not in a moment of passion, but in cold calculation. The prosecution would later argue that Stimson had carefully considered the execution of Molly, that he had been following her movements, waiting for the moment that he has chosen to kill her. This was not a crime of impulse. This was a crime of obsession, of control taken to its ultimate, most horrific conclusion. When police arrived at the scene, they found Joshua Stimson wandering around the car park, covered in blood. Body camera footage captured the moment officers encountered him, his clothing spattered with evidence of what he had just done. He was arrested immediately, taken into custody, while Molly's body remained in her car. Her life ended in a place that should have been safe, in the middle of an ordinary day, doing an ordinary thing. The trial that followed would reveal the full extent of Stimson's obsessive behavior, the pattern that had been established with Alexandra and Leah, the way he had used social media to track Molly's movements. The prosecution painted a picture of a man who could not accept rejection, who saw women not as autonomous individuals with the right to make their own choices, but as possessions to be controlled. Stimson's defense argued diminished responsibility, suggesting that he was not fully in control of his actions. But the evidence told a different story. The knife purchased 2 days in advance. The surveillance of Molly's social media. The appearance at the gym. The waiting. The planning. These were the actions of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. The case of Molly McLaren raises profound questions about the role of social media in modern life, about the ways in which our digital footprints can be used against us by those with malicious intent. Molly was not doing anything wrong by sharing her life online. She was participating in the culture of her generation, using platforms that billions of people use every day. But in the hands of someone like Joshua Stimpson, that information became a weapon. He used her posts to track her, to know where she would be, to plan his attack. The very openness that makes social media valuable, that allows us to stay connected with friends and family, became a vulnerability. This is not to say that Molly was at fault in any way. She was not. The responsibility for her death lies entirely with Joshua Stimpson, with his obsession, his refusal to accept rejection, his decision to take a life. But her case does highlight a reality that many people, especially women, face in the digital age. Stalkers and abusers have new tools at their disposal, ways to monitor and track their victims that didn't exist a generation ago. A simple post about going to the gym, a check-in at a restaurant, a photo that reveals a location in the background. These small pieces of information can be assembled into a complete picture of someone's routine, their habits, their vulnerabilities. The documentary, The Murder of Molly McLaren, Social Media Murders, asks the question, to what extent was social media responsible for this despicable crime? It's a complicated question without a simple answer. Social media didn't kill Molly McLaren. Joshua Stimpson did, but social media provided him with the means to track her, to know where she would be, to plan his attack with precision. It's a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill. In this case, it was used for the worst possible purpose. Molly's story is a tragedy, but it's also a warning. It reminds us that the information we share online is not always seen only by the people we intend to see it. It reminds us that there are people who will use that information in ways we never anticipated. It reminds us that the digital world and the physical world are not separate. They intersect, they overlap, and what happens in one can have profound consequences in the other. For the women who dated Joshua Stimpson before Molly, there must be a terrible weight of survivor's guilt, a sense of what if that can never be fully resolved. They recognized the danger, they got away, they even reported him to police in Alexandra's case. But the system didn't stop him. He moved on to another victim, and that victim was Molly McLaren. It's a failure that echoes through so many cases of domestic violence and stalking. The warning signs are there, the pattern is established, but somehow the person is allowed to continue to find new victims until finally they cross the line from harassment into violence, from threats into action. Joshua Stimpson was found guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 26 years. It's a sentence that acknowledges the severity of his crime, the premeditation, the stalking, the ultimate act of violence. But no sentence can bring Molly back. No amount of time in prison can undo what was done in that parking lot in Chatham. Her family and friends are left with memories, with photographs, with social media posts that now serve as a painful reminder of a life cut short. Molly McLaren was 23 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. She had dreams, plans, people who loved her. She made the mistake of dating someone who turned out to be dangerous, but that's not a mistake that should cost someone their life. She made the choice to end a relationship that wasn't working, but that's not a choice that should lead to murder. She lived her life openly on social media, but that's not a crime, and it's not an invitation for someone to stalk and kill her. Her story has become part of a larger conversation about violence against women, about stalking, about the ways in which technology has changed the landscape of personal safety. It's a conversation that needs to continue, that needs to lead to changes in how we think about online privacy, about how we respond to stalking and harassment, about how we protect potential victims before they become actual victims. Molly's death was preventable. Joshua Stimson had a history. The warning signs were there. But he was allowed to continue until he found Molly, until he tracked her movements